A 2-month-old baby, injured in an Iranian drone strike. A 17-year-old girl suffering severe head and eye injuries. 32 Bahraini citizens wounded in a single overnight attack on the island of Sitra. Children, families, homes destroyed. This is what happened in the Gulf last night. Iran launched its most devastating overnight assault yet, hitting Bahrain's largest oil refinery, targeting Saudi Arabia's oil fields, striking Qatar, the UAE, Kuwait, and Iraq simultaneously. And as that attack unfolded, oil crossed $100 per barrel for the first time in 4 years. An emergency G7 meeting was called. Iran's Revolutionary Guard threatened to set ablaze any Western tanker that tries to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. And Tehran named a new supreme leader, one who, unlike his father, actively supports Iran acquiring nuclear weapons. In one single overnight period, this war entered a completely different and more dangerous phase. Tonight, we break down everything that happened, what it means, and where this is all heading. Let's start with Bahrain, because what happened there overnight is the single most alarming development in the Gulf since this war began. Iran launched a wave of drone strikes targeting Bahrain's island of Sitra. The primary target was the Bapco refinery, Bahrain's state-owned energy facility, one of the largest in the Gulf, processing 405,000 barrels of oil per day. The refinery was hit. Smoke rose from the complex, visible across the island. Bapco confirmed the strike and immediately declared force majeure. Force majeure is a legal term that allows a company to suspend its contractual obligations when extraordinary circumstances make it impossible to fulfill them. In plain language, Bapco is saying, "We have been attacked. We cannot guarantee our operations. Our contracts are suspended until further notice." A 405,000 barrel per day refinery suddenly offline. But the refinery damage is only part of the story, because the drones did not just hit the industrial facility. They hit the surrounding residential areas. 32 Bahraini citizens were wounded, for cases were described as serious. Among the injured, a 17-year-old girl with severe head and eye injuries, and a 2-month-old baby. Iran attacked a residential neighborhood in Bahrain and injured a 2-month-old infant. Bahrain's Interior Ministry described it as blatant Iranian aggression. And they are right. This is not a military strike on a military target. This is an attack on a civilian island that happened to be near an energy facility, with the consequences falling on families, children, and infants. The Bahrain attack was devastating, but it was just one front in a much wider overnight assault. Iran launched simultaneous attacks across the entire Gulf region. Let's go through them one by one. Qatar. Explosions were heard in the capital Doha on Monday morning. Qatar's defense ministry confirmed its forces intercepted a missile attack. This is now the latest in a sustained campaign of Iranian missiles and drones against a country that was actively trying to mediate peace. Saudi Arabia. Saudi defense forces intercepted and destroyed 2 separate waves of drones heading toward the Sheba oil field in the southeast of the country. The Sheba field is one of Saudi Arabia's largest oil production sites. Had those drones broken through, the energy shock would have been catastrophic. The U.S. State Department responded by ordering all non-emergency American government employees and their families to leave Saudi Arabia immediately, citing safety risks. United Arab Emirates. Air defenses responded to a missile threat. The UAE Foreign Ministry released dramatic footage showing Iranian drones being locked onto by anti-missile systems. A rattle of gunfire. The drones exploding midair. An operator reporting, "Target destroyed, sir." It is the footage of a country defending its cities from an active aerial assault. Kuwait, hit by 7 missiles and 5 drones on Sunday, faced another missile and drone attack on Monday. Kuwait's air defenses were scrambled again. Iraq, an Iraqi air defense system shot down a drone approaching Victoria Base, a U.S.-operated military compound inside Baghdad International Airport. It was not immediately confirmed who launched it, but the pattern of Iranian drone activity across the region was clear. In a single overnight period, Qatar, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Kuwait, and Iraq all came under attack. This is not a targeted military campaign. This is a regional war. Against the backdrop of these attacks, the global energy market crossed a historic and alarming threshold. Oil prices surged above $100 per barrel for the first time in 4 years. Before this war began, oil was trading at roughly $60 to $70 per barrel. It has now risen by more than 40% in just days. And the pressure is not letting up. The Strait of Hormuz, through which approximately 1/5 of the world's entire oil supply passes, is effectively at a standstill. Iran's Revolutionary Guard has issued a direct threat. Any Western tanker that attempts to navigate the strait will be set ablaze. That threat is being taken seriously. Hundreds of ships laden with oil have now gathered outside the strait, waiting, unable to move, unwilling to risk the passage. The economic consequences are spreading globally at speed. An emergency meeting of the G7, the group of the world's 7 largest advanced economies, has been called specifically to address the oil crisis. 3 G7 countries, including the United States, have already expressed support for releasing national oil reserves to try to stabilize prices. Japan, which relies on the Middle East for approximately 95% of its crude oil, with roughly 70% of that shipped through the Strait of Hormuz, is already preparing. A senior Japanese parliament member confirmed the government has instructed a national oil reserve storage facility to prepare for a possible release of crude. Japan is preparing for a sustained supply crisis, and President Trump addressed the soaring gas prices directly, writing on Truth Social that rising prices were a very small price to pay for USA and world safety and peace. He added that oil prices will drop rapidly when the destruction of the Iran nuclear threat is over. Whether markets and ordinary citizens paying at the pump agree with that assessment remains to be seen. And now, the development that may ultimately prove to be the most consequential of all. Late on Sunday, as the Gulf was absorbing Iranian missile strikes, as oil crossed $100, as G7 leaders scrambled for emergency meetings, Iran named its new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, the 56-year-old second eldest son of the late Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who was killed in the opening strikes of the war on February 28. Mojtaba had long been considered a contender for the position. He is a cleric, like his father. He served in the Iran-Iraq War. He rose through the ranks of Iran's religious and political establishment. He became one of the wealthiest individuals in Iran, with reported assets including approximately $300 million in gold and diamonds, Swiss bank accounts, and wealth stored in banks across the UAE, Syria, Venezuela, and Africa. As supreme leader, he now holds enormous power. He is commander-in-chief of Iran's armed forces. He appoints the leaders of all military branches. He selects the head of the judiciary. He is, effectively, the most powerful person in the Islamic Republic. And there is one detail about Mojtaba Khamenei that changes the entire calculus of this war. His father, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, had issued a religious decree, a fatwa, opposing the acquisition and use of nuclear weapons. That decree was one of the key arguments Iran used to insist its nuclear program was peaceful. Mojtaba Khamenei does not share that position. He is reported to be a supporter of Iran acquiring nuclear weapons. The man now leading Iran, in the middle of a war with the United States and Israel, wants a nuclear bomb. So who exactly is Mojtaba Khamenei, and what kind of supreme leader is he likely to be? Born in Mashhad in 1969, Mojtaba is the second eldest of the late Ayatollah's sons. He served during the Iran-Iraq War, giving him military credentials that carry weight within the Revolutionary Guard and the broader security establishment. He rose quietly but steadily through Iran's clerical hierarchy, building influence without the high public profile of his father. And that last point is important. Unlike his father, who was known for lengthy public addresses, sermons, and direct communication with the Iranian people, Mojtaba Khamenei is not known for public speaking. His voice is unfamiliar to many Iranians. In a country where the supreme leader's authority rests partly on religious charisma and public recognition, starting from a position of relative obscurity is a challenge. Analysts expect him to continue his father's hardline ideological positions, anti-Western, anti-Israel, committed to Iranian regional influence. But with the added element of openness to nuclear weapons, his leadership represents a potential shift in the most dangerous possible direction. Donald Trump had already publicly called Mojtaba unacceptable and a lightweight, and ruled out any U.S. acceptance of his leadership. Israel's military responded to his appointment almost immediately. launching a new wave of strikes on central Iran, targeting internal security command centers, missile launch sites, rocket engine production facilities, and Revolutionary Guard infrastructure. The message from Jerusalem was unmistakable: we do not recognize your authority, and we will not stop. Israel's military announced a new wave of strikes on central Iran on Monday, the first since Mojtaba Khamenei was named supreme leader. The targets were significant: a rocket engine production facility, several long-range ballistic missile launch sites that Israel said threatened its territory, the internal security headquarters in Isfahan, a police headquarters, facilities used by the Revolutionary Guards, and the paramilitary Basij force. Israel's military was explicit about its reasoning, describing the internal security and Basij forces as a central arm in the repression of the Iranian civilian population responsible for brutal and systematic violence. By framing the strikes this way, Israel is positioning itself not just as fighting a military adversary, but as striking the infrastructure of an authoritarian regime on behalf of its own people. The statement said the strikes were part of deepening the damage to the core arrays and foundations of the Iranian regime. This language, foundations of the Iranian regime, is not the language of a limited military campaign. This is the language of regime change. While all eyes are on the Gulf, the situation in Lebanon continues to deteriorate. Israeli airstrikes on Beirut's southern suburbs continued on Monday, with large plumes of smoke visible over the city. Israel warned it would strike branches of Al-Qard al-Hassan, a financial firm linked to Hezbollah that operates in the group's strongholds. But a much more alarming accusation has now emerged. Human Rights Watch, one of the world's most respected international human rights organizations, has accused Israel of using white phosphorus in Lebanon. Specifically, white phosphorus fired using artillery at residential areas in the southern Lebanese village of Yomer hours after Israeli forces had warned residents to evacuate. White phosphorus is a chemical incendiary substance. When it burns at extremely high temperatures. It can set buildings on fire. It can burn human flesh down to the bone. Survivors face the risk of infections, organ failure, and respiratory damage, even from relatively small burns. Human rights advocates argue that using white phosphorus in populated areas violates international law, regardless of prior evacuation warnings. Israel has not publicly confirmed the use of white phosphorus in this instance, but the accusation, from a credible international organization, adds another layer of international scrutiny to Israel's conduct in Lebanon. Let's step back and look at the full picture, because the sheer number of simultaneous crises is almost overwhelming. Militarily, Iran is conducting a massive, multi-front assault on Gulf states simultaneously while absorbing devastating U.S. and Israeli strikes on its own territory. Its new supreme leader has just been installed. His first days in power will define whether Iran seeks any path to de-escalation or doubles down. Economically, oil is above $100 per barrel. The Strait of Hormuz is effectively blocked. The G7 is in emergency session. Japan is preparing to release oil reserves. Qatar's energy minister warned last week that prices could reach $150, a level he said would bring down the economies of the world. That warning now looks less like a worst case and more like a trajectory. Diplomatically, Qatar is furious. The Arab League has condemned Iran. Saudi Arabia has its first civilian deaths. The U.S. has ordered non-emergency personnel out of Saudi Arabia. Britain is shooting down Iranian drones over the Gulf. The entire regional diplomatic architecture that existed before February 28th has been shattered. Humanitarily, a 2-month-old baby was injured in Bahrain last night. White phosphorus accusations are emerging from Lebanon. Civilian infrastructure, a desalination plant, a refinery, residential neighborhoods, is being targeted. The human cost is rising every day. Strategically, Iran has a new supreme leader who wants nuclear weapons. The United States is considering sending special operations forces to find and seize Iran's highly enriched uranium stockpile, and Israel is explicitly targeting the foundations of the Iranian regime. Every single pressure point is moving in the wrong direction simultaneously. A 2-month-old baby injured by Iranian drones in Bahrain. Oil crossing $100 a barrel for the first time in 4 years. A new Iranian supreme leader who wants nuclear weapons, taking power in the middle of a war. An emergency G7 meeting called. The Strait of Hormuz at a standstill, with hundreds of tankers unable to move. Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Kuwait, Bahrain, and Iraq all struck in a single night. Israel launching strikes on Iran's security foundations hours after the new leader was named. White phosphorus accusations in Lebanon. This is where the world stands today. 1 week into a conflict that has already reshaped the Middle East and is beginning to reshape the entire global economic order. The question of how this ends and what it costs grows harder to answer with every passing day. What is clear is this: the war that began on February 28th is not winding down. It is widening. It is deepening. And the decisions made in the coming days, by Tehran's new leader, by Washington, by Jerusalem, by the Gulf states, and by the broader international community, will determine whether the world finds a way back from the edge or takes another step toward it. Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe for the latest updates as this crisis continues to unfold. Stay informed, stay critical, and we will see you in the next one.